Hi, I'm Michael Boyajian, and I'm going to do another book talk. I just taped one a little while ago. I'm going to tape another one on my wife and I's new book on the historic nature of our home in Fishkill, identifying it, in our opinion, as a more than likely Underground Railroad station. And I'm not going to go into the details. I went into that in the previous book talk or that I taped about the process of doing that. What I want to talk about is I've peppered throughout the book interesting stories between myself and African Americans that I either work for or worked with. And I just want to talk about a few of those. But first, I want to mention that we're fortunate in Hudson Valley to have the the FDR Library and Museum, and of course the family home and Eleanor Roosevelt's cottage and Vanderbilt Mansion up the road, and a few other FDR sites. But the library and museum are fantastic resources. It's the intellectual hub, I believe, of the Hudson Valley. And the types of lectures that go on there you can't get things like that outside of Manhattan, let alone in Hudson Valley. Okay, so we went to one there before my wife got sick, about by the Underground Railroad Station Division of the National Park Service, and the director of that division told us about the Underground Railroad. And I ended up getting in contact with some authors and luminaries in the field, locally and nationally, and that really started jazzing up our research and taking notes on the nature of this home. That's about 10 years of research and stuff, and I guess the FDR talk was maybe 5 years ago, but it's been picked up, put down, picked up, put down. My wife got sick, we put it down. My wife recovered, we picked it up. She got sick and passed away. I put it back down, and then earlier this year, I think I picked it up again, and I hooked up with the Fishkill town historian Arnold Festivo, who's doing fantastic work at the African American burial ground here in Fishkill. I met with him, and he checked out the Underground Railroad points in this house, photographed them all, but he told me what his checklist was for that burial ground, and it's quite extensive. And yesterday and today, in fact, I drove by it, and the amount of work he's done, getting rid of the overgrowth and polishing up the headstones, many of which are have been on their back and are submerged in grass. You can barely see them, and he's working to get those properly restored, and signage and a lot of other things done to that historic burial ground. But anyhow, I just want to talk about a few of the quotes or stories I put in there. One is my Republican chairman when I was a Republican in Brooklyn, and Arthur Bromwell, and he used to tell me stories about how he his life in Brooklyn, and he's the person who put my name in nomination to become a judge, by the way, in the Pataki administration, and I served under 3 governors: George Pataki, Eliot Spitzer, and Patterson. And whatchamacallit, one of course there. And anyhow, one of the stories he told me is that in times when there was an emergency that affected the African American community adversely in, say, New York City, they would form a convoy of automobiles and drive slowly through the African American neighborhoods. This is before the internet or, the alert texting and stuff. This was the way they did texting back then, emergency texting. And one out of each car, someone held a flare burning, and it was like an alert. And the other story he told me was how they, the African American community, knew they were being ripped off at every deli in Brooklyn, that the white deli workers were putting their finger on a scale and causing that every time African Americans purchased cold cuts, they were getting less than they paid for, and they knew it. This was not being done to white customers. And so what they did one day is they went around to every deli in Brooklyn and purchased cold cuts. And, they had the label with the weight and the price on it. They brought it back to a secure location and had a scale that was certified by the state of New York as accurate. And every single package was less than what the weight said on the package and less than what they paid for. And they took that to the press. So that's the kind of stuff that went on back in the day. And I always wondered how Brooklyn ended up on the, formally on the, the Supreme Court ended that part of the Voting Rights Act as one of the places to be supervised or monitored. But maybe because of that deli story, that's probably why. But anyhow, and for the, but anyhow, then my coworker, Connie McAllister at the Department of Labor, told me a story of interest that when she was a child growing up in West Virginia, she was very thirsty one day, and she was with her mother, and she said, Mommy, I want to drink from that water fountain. I'm very, very thirsty. And she goes, No, you can't drink that. That's a white-only water fountain. And she just let go of her mother's hand, ran over there, and drank from the fountain. And, I just, without thinking, that was an intrinsically brave thing to do back in the day, But she did it. She was, not one to mess with. She was a very good person, most dedicated government worker I ever met. And I knew quite a few good ones, good government workers. But in any fact, that's another story. And then I worked, when I went back, not as a judge, but as a supervisor, working on these old cases that were like 10 years old. There was a lawsuit brought by Now, that these cases were languishing, and the courts ordered the New York State Division of Human Rights to clear out those cases. Anyhow, I was brought in as a supervising attorney after I kind of retired in 2009 to supervise a team of attorneys and interns and to clear out these cases. And we did a good job. The team did a great job. We cleared out 10-year-old cases out of one office alone in less than a year, okay? And a very high number went up to the judges. 32%, I think, or 35%. The fellow I work with, Steve, he did the calculations to find out that number. But when Jill Towns, the deputy commissioner who hired me, what she said to me after my interview when she hired me, she said, she was African-American, of course. She said, you got to enjoy things that I never did as a child growing up. We had no Jones Beach. And I said, the light bulb went off in my head because I grew up on Jones Beach. After we moved out of the city, through my childhood, through my teen years, through my early 20s, I spent almost every day at the beach with my friends. And she's right. There were zero African Americans on Jones Beach that entire time period, while I was going to the beach almost every day, whether with my family or with my friends. And absolutely zero. Zero. I'm telling you, zero. And I told her that, and she said, well, we'll see. There's a PBS special on Robert Moses on Jones Beach coming out soon. Well, the night of the show, my wife Jeri and I are watching it, and sure enough, there are no African Americans except one. Slightly overweight gentleman in a Speedo bathing suit. And the way the producers of the documentary worked it, it looked like it was a different person all the time. But it was the same person. And there were no African Americans other than this one guy on the beach that they happened to have some footage of. And that's in the course of a long time, the 60s and the 70s is the time period I'm talking about. And in any case, I went into the office the next morning, and Jill had, Deputy Commissioner Jill Towns had seen the documentary, of course, and she says, well, Mike, you were wrong. I go, huh? What do you mean I was wrong? She goes, there was one African-American at Jones Beach during that time. Anyhow, Then the other thing we worked on, the deputy commissioner and I, was she came into my office once and said, this book just came out. Go through it, see if you could find anything about discriminatory housing practices on Long Island by William Levitt, the creator of Levittown in New York State and Pennsylvania, all over the place. He's the Levittowns. And I said, okay, I jumped right into it. The name of the book is Sweet Land of Liberty. And within the first 100 pages, I can't remember the exact page number, but it was in the 90s. But let's just say the first 100 pages came the one line, the quote that said that the author got from Levitt, which is, "I will not sell to black people because it'll scare away white home buyers." Bang! That's the silver bullet we were looking for. And that book, we practically wanted to put a guard on protecting that book. You know, I mean, we did. But anyhow, yeah, again, and growing up on Long Island, you know, when we moved, my wife and I moved to Brooklyn, you know, and if the lawyers, if they found out you were from Long Island, they'd give you the lecture like, it's not the reality you grew up in is not real. There, with the number of known African Americans in your town, you know, and they were right. I mean, all we knew about African Americans, for the most part, was what we saw on TV, and that's what the TV people wanted to show us and sell papers, you might say. But in my high school class of 1,000 people, my class alone, baby boomer years. We had 2 African Americans, one guy and one woman, unrelated to each other. That was it. I met the African American kid once, a very nice guy. He used to hang out with my buddy up in a certain part of town. But anyhow, yeah. So yes, there was definitely something going on Long Island, and we were looking into that. However, for me, my position was to basically get rid of those cold cases. That had been languishing in one of the offices for 10 years. And we, like I said, we zeroed them out and in less than a year. And at the same time, my job was contingent on Obama funding, stimulus funding, and that ran out. And so that was it. I went back into retirement. But anyhow, that's another group of stories. And but I've got more stories than that. But again, I just want to tip my hat to those people that told me those stories, and of course to the FDR Museum and Library, which is an intellectual hub of the Hudson Valley, on par with anything coming out of Manhattan. And also, once I was doing research on a book I did on an Armenian photographer, FDR's Armenian photographer. He actually didn't work for FDR, but was the assigned photographer from some company to FDR's administration, and had a lot of contact with the president. I did research in the library there, and I'm getting to the point about these classified documents that are flying around today like comic books or something. You know, you go into the library, and there's only maybe 2 or 4 people allowed in at a time, and each person is like within about 20 feet from each other at a square desk. And you sit there, and in the words of Bill Bryson's in his Australia book, touch nothing. You touch nothing. And you request what you want, and they bring it to you. And you can only request like a few things at a time. But they're very good workers. They're great. The head librarian's terrific. And they bring it to you, and you can't take anything off the cart. You got to wave at them, and they come down and they take it. Meanwhile, they got about 100 cameras pointing at you from every direction, and they have a very large security detail there, and watching you. And this is not top secret stuff here. It's not even classified at this point, but because of the nature of its incarval historic importance to the United States of America, it's well protected. And it's astonishing that that's the security at the FDR library for stuff that's over 60, 70 years old. Yet, on the other hand, they're flying around the certain former president's country club, and he's showing them to like foreign visitors. It's astounding how this happened. I can't understand it, having experienced the security at the FDR library. And in any event, I want to tip my hat to that library for the great job they do. And that's it. Have a happy 2024, and I hope you enjoy the book.